From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? I'm glad to have another conversation where you and I get to talk about a trending topic, both in the industry and in this case, kind of in the world today.
Oh, I'm doing good, Steve. Moving forward. So that's always a good sign. And how are you doing?
I'm doing a little bit better. It's recovering from a little bit of illness, but I'm glad to be back on my feet and gonna pushing through and looking forward to getting back to 100%. But regardless of that, we're recording this episode in the beginning in March of 2025, and this is not a political show. This is not something that we're going to talk about um, good or bad or why or anything. But there's been a lot of talk in our industry about the impact of trade tariffs, and that's something that's come up. What impact is that going to have on business in the world, and specifically the AV industry, because that's really where we live. And as programmers, what does that mean to us? So, and I'll kind of throw out something for discussion, as you and I have chatted about a little bit, is that pricing of products may be unpredictable moving forward, good or bad or whatever it is. We don't know, and there's hesitation, and kind of is a little bit reminiscent of the chip shortages and supply chain and all that stuff, and even back some time ago when there was fuel surcharges, and it's very hard to be able to price out product projects or even know if you're going to have product availability for one reason or another. So that's, unfortunately, unknowns cause stress. Stress then impacts our ability to do our jobs. So, what are your thoughts, I guess, from a programmer's perspective? Some things maybe to be aware of, or that may happen. It may have an impact on a programmer in the future.
I think really the biggest impact I'm seeing is the onshore, like you're saying. Usually, growing up, I'm coming up for the ranks and all that stuff. I always kind of understood, the first in, first out model, the FIFO. So if I went today and placed an order, say, let's say building a classroom. I reach out and say, okay, I'm building this classroom, and I start getting quotes for that equipment. And now okay, the quote came in, great. It's in budget range. I start programming, building the program for this based on that equipment. And then manufacturers go, you know, due to tariffs or due to surcharges, due to put whatever you want here, we are now going to increase our price. And that includes all active quotes out. Oh, wait, now my quote's out of budget. Now I got to um, design the system so I can get equipment that's in budget. And then, okay, how does that impact my program? Now I'm using different equipment. Now my program is impacted. Now I got to, so that's where I see, and this being the biggest impact is, okay, we are changing things because it's no longer, oh, we're going to honor you that quote. All new quotes are going to be impacted. Okay, I can start planning for that. But it's the whole notion of current active ones are getting impacted. Um, to me, I think that's not a fair way to do things, but I understand it. It's business. Everyone's out to make a buck, and you got to protect your margins. I fully understand it, but it does throw us programmers, our users, into a unknown. Like, we don't know what's coming down the line, so it's harder for us to start planning.
I, I think you're right on there, and especially if you have tried to establish standards, and we've talked about this before where you kind of can't get fixed or locked into one product line because that hopefully people have learned their lesson from that, from the pandemic, that when it's not available you can't be just stuck and without options. So but programming time, programming effort, programming project timelines, all those things are likely going to be impacted if we have to start, as you said, re-engineering systems, substituting products, possibly using things that are less familiar. And I think there's one thing to say that a cost went up. It's another thing to say perhaps it gets to a point where a product just isn't sold for one reason or another because of trade wars or whatever that looks like. And again, we're not going to get into the specifics of it, but we're not sure what this could result in, and it could end up being blowing over, and it's not something that impacts us at all. But I think it's just worth speaking about because I there's have certainly have to put some thought into it to be prepared.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's what if that product that are you have scoped in the project is no longer is now coming from a country that your country no longer likes, and no longer allowing those products to come in. And it doesn't, it could be any countries, like you say, Stephen. We're not saying good, bad, indifferent. Like we're just talking about what we are seeing, how it impacts us. To me, that something like that is like, you know, you're planning on to go into a restaurant and two of your friends getting a fight. Now you can no longer go to that restaurant. It doesn't impact, like you had nothing to do with it, but now you're impacted by it. Same thing. Like, okay, I really like this product. Oh, wait, these countries are fighting each other and we can't get this product anymore. Now I gotta go re-engineer my standards, reevaluate things, all that stuff, just because you over there can't get along.
If you think about it too, there may be situations, and again, maybe I'm overthinking this, but when the components have to change because of availability or tariffs that
Mhm.
cause a product to perform differently or be less reliable, and that's also the potential of a big surprise. So, um, yeah, lots of things to consider, and in that regard, I'm not even sure how a programmer would prepare for that. But but I guess what needs to be thought about is that anything changes are going to impact programming time and programming effort, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we're going to be impacted indirectly. Like what our actions are getting impacted because of nothing we are doing. It's what others are doing. And it may not even have to do with AV or any of that stuff, but it's going to impact AV. It's going to impact technology. It's going to impact our daily lives. Um, so yeah, we are definitely got to be mindful of what's going out there. And like you were saying earlier in the top of this is we can't be stuck in an ecosystem. Because once you get stuck in an ecosystem and that you can no longer play in that ecosystem, what are you going to do?
Hmm.
Do you have the skills, the knowledge, the know-how to go to a different ecosystem or to open up a little bit and branch out? Or are you stuck in the mud?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think what this comes back to that you often say is that you don't put a new product into production until you test it, and you have to maybe make sure that you're bringing in different options into a lab to be prepared for, hey, this is my first choice, but this would be my second or third choice and I guess that's one being proactive in that regard could be one way of being able to protect against the downside. But there's definitely going to be some things to consider there. And then, the other side of it is again, if we look at the pandemic, there were probably a number of systems out there that were unicorns that were done with these were what the products that were available at the time, and and how viable are those systems moving forward because they're different than all the others, and they're not easily managed. They don't potentially have a lot of the same um, features, and they're also going to be harder to troubleshoot for somebody who's used to going into a room and seeing a lot of the same parts and pieces.
100%. And you bring up a good point, is that unicorn. And that actually impacts us more than I think some people realize it. Because yeah, we were, I would say during that pandemic, AV did a lot of good things with very little options. They built unicorns. Now our users expect these unicorns to be permanent. And then they start questions like, well, wait, your unicorn did us fine during pandemic. Why can't it do fine, now? And maybe it can. Maybe your unicorn needs to be no longer a unicorn and be your standard. Or maybe you can't get that unicorn equipment anymore. Or maybe you did what to do to just get through and you want to improve the user experience, but your users still look and be like, well, we only paid half that price for your unicorn, and we're fine with that, not understanding that the experience would be better with our standards.
Yeah, but lots to consider. Lots of things that um, I appreciate your perspective on it because it's something that I'm a little bit removed from, but I can only imagine that it can be hard conversations to have um, because we all try to tend to move toward consistency, and especially from a user's perspective, they shouldn't have to worry about what's going on behind the scenes. But and we try to be purposeful in designing and programming and implementing systems that are consistent. But when you're thrown a curveball, that's not always possible.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say to our users, 'cause I'm sure they're all yelling at the radio. Going back to what you talked about, yeah, I mentioned, build your sandbox, get 3 or 4 options. That is the ideal. We know you can't always do that. You don't always have the time to be, hey, I can go test all these. I can build a sandbox. I've been in my current role since 2022, of April 2022. And my day one, I wanted to build a sandbox. And I still have yet to get my sandbox going to the way I want it. So yes, I sit there and say we should have a sandbox. Yes, sandbox are important. Yes, you need to go out and vet products, but we know work comes first. The job
Yeah.
comes first. And yeah, you may not always get there. So you don't have to throw things at the radio.
Well, before you you turn us off, and before you get up in arms, I think we'll wrap this one up. But I think that was a good way of putting a bow on it, James. And
Yeah.
we probably covered this well, and it's something that we don't have a solution for, but it's a good conversation to have, and it's probably a good conversation to have within your team and your organization, and I think as always we encourage programmers to speak up and share their perspective and let their voice be heard because it's we, we're always looked at as programmers are always looked at as the ones that just make it work, but it's not as easy always as people would seem. With programmers just good at what they do. So
Yeah.
James, how can people get in touch with you, talk more about this topic, and keep up with what you're doing?
Again, you Google me, I'm out there. Again, on X at AB_James King, Blue Sky, Hetma, LinkedIn, in the community, Ask the Programmer on LinkedIn. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
Absolutely. And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media and the platforms that James mentioned as well. And trying to get more involved a little bit in some of the more niche communities, Hetman included, as well as some of the other platforms, just to both promote a little bit about what we're talking about and hear what people are looking for more information about. The one thing that's come up actually is there's been a request for a show on C sharp. So if you are somebody who knows C sharp or wants to talk about C sharp, please reach out to us and we'll post a little bit about that, looking for a guest that can speak to it. But we are out there listening and we do want to be able to serve this audience well. One thing that I'd like to share, my company Control Concepts is a supporter of the show, and we also like to help programmers succeed. And what we do is build the components that programmers use to either interface with products or add functionality to their systems. And more about that can be found at controlconcepts.net, where we have some free downloads and paid downloads and so forth. We would really like to hear from you, so please reach out to us. And we are both on video and on audio. So if you want to see us, you can go to YouTube. If you want to hear us, you can go to your favorite podcast player. And we're several over 200 episodes in, and we're moving strong. So please, keep up your support. Let us know what you like and what you want to hear more about, and it would be great if you wouldn't mind sharing your favorite episode. Until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.